Hello everyone, I'm Jeff. Welcome back to Slate River Photography. Today we're going to be looking at some of the pictures I took while at the Great Sand Dunes National Park in Colorado. My wife Amber and I went to the sand dunes on one of our first camping trips this summer. While on this trip, I experimented with several different techniques, including getting shots low to the ground to achieve bokeh in the foreground of the picture, as well as doing longer exposure shots with water to achieve sort of a smooth or milky effect. On this picture, I left the shutter open for 1/4 of a second, and that was long enough for me to achieve that milky texture in the water. I shot all of these pictures with my trusty Canon RF 16 to 28mm f2.8 lens. Shortly after we arrived at the sand dunes, I experimented with some different water shots because luckily the creek was still flowing. I took this picture of the creek at the sand dunes at ISO 100. My f-stop was 22, and then I left the shutter open for 1/15 of a second. And that was enough to allow me to get somewhat of a milky texture in the water. If you leave the shutter open for longer, you'll get more of that milky texture and it'll be even smoother. Whereas if you open the shutter for just a little bit, then you achieve somewhat of that milky texture. One of the challenges with this type of picture is that increasing the amount of time the shutter is open will also increase the amount of light that gets in, which can cause your shots to get blown out. To counteract that, turn the ISO down to 100, and if that's still too bright, then you may need to add a filter to your lens. This is an example of a picture that I really struggled to keep from blowing out the sky. I left the shutter open long enough to get the milky water texture, but doing so caused the sky to really get blown out. Amber and I started hiking up the dunes after I got the creek shots, when shortly after we came upon another photographer. He had a massive lens, no backpack, no water, and was carrying his camera and tripod by hand. I asked him what type of shots he was hoping to get, and he responded that he was trying to get shots of the sand with no footprints, and he asked us if we knew where he needed to go to get those. It seemed to us like an impossible task because the whole front side of the dunes were absolutely full of footprints. As Amber and I made our way to the top of the ridge, we started to get views of the mountains behind the dunes, which provided some good backdrops for pictures. We kept on trekking, eventually making it all the way to the highest point on the dunes, where we were alone. I could see that not many people had been up there, and I was starting to get shots with few to no footprints in them. The lesson that I learned from the photographer that day was to always be prepared. He knew what he wanted to get, so he had a good goal in mind, but he didn't bring the gear to help him reach that goal. Amber and I planned to hike about 4 miles, which is what we did, but we both had packs with lots of water, with snacks, and we both had good shoes. I also had my camera fastened with the Peak Designs clip, so it was secure, it was hands-free, and it was very easy to access whenever I wanted to get another picture. One of my key takeaways that day was being willing to go where other photographers aren't, and being prepared to do so. Doing these things allowed me to get shots of this very awesome area that are unique. As I mentioned before, I used the Peak Designs camera clip for the first time on this hike, and I absolutely loved it. It allowed my camera to hang from one of my backpack straps and was easy to access whenever I wanted to take a picture. I also used the inexpensive Deco Gear camera bag that I bought on Amazon. This bag was absolutely fantastic despite not costing very much. It has separate pockets to allow for storing different lenses, and it kept my gear free from sand as well. It's lightweight but feels sturdy. So far this summer I've used it on all of my treks. If you or someone you know is looking for hiking gear for your camera, I've included links to all my gear in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.